Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close, I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me.
Adam, what's your point? The future looks bright.
My handshake is better than anything I ever saw. It's right here.
You are a one-of-one?
My son's right about
I don't think I've ever said this before.
You know how sometimes you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, you're like, man, there's not really any major stories. You know, what are we going to talk about today on the podcast? Well, last night wasn't the case because the addendum alone is bigger than the stories that we have here. It's stacked. Lots happened. 2-week ceasefire. CNN says they agreed to the 10-point. No, we didn't. Trump's talking about suing them. That was a mess. A lot of criticism on the way the president came out and said it's going to be the end of this civilization. We have to react to that. I saw a guy from MSNBC say, never in the history of America has a president ever threatened the end of a civilization. Hitler never said this. Mussolini never said this. You know, all these other presidents never said this. You know, obviously Twitter wasn't around. Imagine if Twitter wasn't around with Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin and some of these guys would be tweeting. It would be a very different world. We won't know it. We just have to use our imagination. So we have to react to that. Was it irresponsible? Was it too much? Was it disrespectful? Do you talk to people like that? Is that the way to talk to people? Where is the madness behind that, right? And who won with this negotiation? Did America win in this negotiation? A lot of people are saying Iran wins. Now they get to, if they qualify the $2 million, that could add anywhere between $50 to $100 billion of additional revenue a year to Iran so that Iran come out the winner. Is Israel going to sit on the sidelines and not do anything about it? They said the ceasefire has nothing to do with Lebanon. I think Netanyahu said it. Then on the outside, I think it's Oman that's coming in and talking about, hey, we'd like to help you with X, Y, Z. And they're kind
toll
of
booth.
The toll booth, and they're being opportunistic about it. But there's a lot of things to talk about. We'll address that here today. Jamie Dimon came out and made some thoughts about New York City and Mamdani. And Mamdani came out and said the problem with New York City is racism and jobs are not being given to colored people. It's more towards, whites and all of that, which I'll let him say it because he knows better on how to tweet racist messages than I do. So I'll let him explain himself properly. And then oil prices, we have the numbers this morning. Oil prices went from, what was the high? 115, 116 to 94 today, Rob, if you want to pull it up to see exactly where it's at. It's an 18 or 20% drop off. Tom gave me the numbers. Tom gave me a chart. There's no way that's the number, Rob. No, that's not the number, Rob. No. No, that's not. That's futures, Rob. No, that's not the number. Go to actual oil price. You were about
WTC, it's WTI.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. World Trade Center oil price. Okay. So negative. Listen, for anybody that criticizes Rob's Farsi has gotten better. His Assyrian's gotten better. His ability to type out Middle Eastern names is the best it's ever been. I'm so proud of Rob. So, Rob, don't let anybody take shots at you. You're doing great. Rob can spell Middle Eastern names better than a name like Mark Johnson. That's what's happened to him. He's so good right now.
And Mark, if you're listening, we miss you.
I got a chart right here, this chart right here, which is a very interesting chart Rob just gave me.
It is 70.
There's no way it's 70.
Yeah.
No, it's 92.
No, it's 92. Oh. It's not 70. No. You're visiting the same website. It's like guys who go to whitehouse.com and they miss one word and they go to a porn site. You have to be very, very careful when you're doing stuff like this. And so we have a special friend with us here as well, Cullen Roche, who has done great work with finance, economics, and he got strong opinions. Right before we started, I said, I'm already going to like this guy with the way he was talking. I can't wait to start chatting it up. So it's great to have you here as well with us.
Great to be here, Pat.
We're going to put the links to his book. His recent book just came out, The Perfect Portfolio. We'll put the link below. But Tom showed me this, okay? The negative perception around AI is now worse than ICE, okay? And let me tell you who they have on this list, okay? Who they have on this list. They have the Pope, they have Colbert, Rubio, they have sanctuary cities, J.D. Vance, Republican Party, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Democratic Party, and Iran. And you have to see where AI is. And by the way, the reason why that is the second chart. As electricity prices keep rising, they increasingly blame AI. This is a very important topic because this kind of goes with the story that Mark Cuban talks about. Mark Cuban put a story out there about CEOs and AI, and do they really know what's going on with AI? We'll address that story as well. Lowe's, I really like what Lowe's did. They made this announcement, $250 million they're investing into $250 million they're investing into plumbers, electricians. What a great story on what these guys are doing. Their CEO is a stud, by the way. Their CEO is an absolute stud of a guy for doing stuff like this. This is great when you hear stories like that. And then we got a few other ones, more Americans are, saying they're not going to be paying taxes this year, which, by the way, that's not us. I'm just telling you that's a story that's coming out that people are saying, why the hell am I paying taxes? Market Watch, Americans are increasingly saying they won't pay their taxes this year as a political protest. Here's what could happen to them, okay? That's Market Watch trying to say, pay it or you may go to jail. I got guys on Mediocre that Mediocre me telling me, have me on the podcast. I'm going to show your people why they shouldn't be paying their taxes. And I'm like, well, listen, all the best to you. Maybe we'll follow up in the future, see where this goes. Because there's a market that people believe you shouldn't pay taxes. And then we got a few other things that we'll get into. One story that came out we have to address is no mediocre worker is safe. The bar for keeping your job just went up, okay? And this is a story that came out from Business Insider, and I like that story, and we're going to get into that story. And Rob, if you can pull up this last story that I wouldn't mind getting into, is there's a major feud going on with conservatives at the White House getting government employees to go from working 4 days to 5 days. Because right now the whole work from home is still happening with thousands of government employees. And it's not even in here, Rob. I just read it on my own. I just want you to look for it, and we'll get to it probably at the end if we get some time to do that. So with that being said, these are the stories that we got for us to get into. I'll be making some big announcements on Friday, so hang tight. On what will happen on Friday. Major news that's coming here soon with Mediocre, with a lot of different things, as well as with merch. Just stay tuned. We'll be making an announcement to you guys come this Friday. Having said that, I think the first story, Rob, to get into is the ceasefire. So last night, 2 days ago, matter of fact, let's go with the two-day sequencing. First, the president tweets on Easter the following thing. Rob, go to the Easter one, because the Easter one is what pissed off a lot of different people. So this is Easter's tweet that the president puts up. He gets out there and says, Tuesday will be power plant day, bridge day, all wrapped up in one. In Iran, there will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise to Allah. At least he's giving credit to their, praise be to Allah. Donald J. Trump. Tucker Carlson reacts to this with a video that went viral. Everybody reacted to it. What is this all about? Tucker's right. Tucker's not right. Why would he say such a thing like this? Here's Tucker. Go for it, Rob.
You think you are? You're tweeting out the F word on Easter morning? You'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. So obviously you're mocking the religion of Iran. Okay. If you seek a religious war, that's a good idea. But by the way, no decent person mocks other people's religions. You may have a problem with the theology. Presumably you do if it's not your religion, and you can explain what that is. But to mock other people's faith is to mock the idea of faith itself. And we should never mock that, because at its core is the acknowledgement that we are not in charge of the universe. We did not build it. We won't be here at the end of it. We can destroy life. We cannot create it because we are not God. The message of all faith,
Okay,
the biggest
so you can pause
picture
at that. And obviously, the folks on X went to town. Tucker's right, Tucker's wrong. Then they played the greatest hits in the past of Tucker criticizing Islam and saying, hey, what happened to you? Did you switch? Did you not? So the president, here's the message coming from the market. And you would think the next day the president would get a little bit more softer. And then this is what he says the following day with his tweets. And everyone's like, Pat, how come you don't react to this? This is not how a president speaks. Rob, if you want to pull up the wild one, a whole civilization will die tonight. Never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change, where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight, one of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. So then that phrase got people reacting, saying, who in the history of mankind has ever said a whole civilization will end tonight. Which civilization? And people started speculating. Is it Iran? Is it this? Who's he talking about? Anyway, so that happens. And then it leads to the ceasefire, which the call happened yesterday based on a conversation with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Federal Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, and wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran, agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. I agreed to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives, and we are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between U.S. and Iran, but a 2-week period would allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated on behalf of the United States of America. As president, also representing countries in the Middle East, it is an honor to have this long-term problem close to resolution. And then, of course, thank you for your attention to this matter. While this happens, minutes after this tweet happens, there's attacks. Iran attacks, I believe, bombs Israel. Israel attacks them. Jesse Waters retweeted a clip saying minutes after this was tweeted, and everybody reacted. Is the ceasefire going to happen? Is it not going to happen? I have my own strong thoughts on this. Is this it, Rob, that was shown?
Yes, sir.
Go for it. This is minutes after the president tweets that. Go ahead.
Well, Jesse, as anticipated, the sirens are now wailing over Tel Aviv, indicating that another missile is inbound. And it looks like those bright lights in the sky are the missiles. And it looks like you can see an interceptor that is in hot pursuit of the missiles. And it's always quite dramatic when you see those interceptors going after it. And these ones might disappear behind our building here, and we're going to lose sight of them. But they're still quite lethal and coming into Tel Aviv. And I didn't see an interception in this case. Should be able to hear it in a second or so.
You can pause it right here. Okay, so that's that. That's happening. So people are like, they didn't keep the ceasefire, all this other stuff. I'll pause here because we got a lot of other things that we'll get into with this here. Tom, your thoughts from the comments, first comments, his second comments, Tucker's comments, and then obviously the ceasefire today. And then, Colin, I'm going to come to you next.
Well, I think basically what happened over Easter weekend is President Kaiser Sose, Trump, really played a Kaiser Sose moment. And he's been negotiating this. He's had Witkoff negotiating this. Vance was in Budapest talking to Viktor Orban, which I think is very interesting because I think that's like a center point there between Putin, Ukraine, and this on both sides of it. And Orban can also talk to the Iranians. So what do I think happened? I think that perhaps Iran blinked. All of a sudden, we heard that they made a comment in a positive direction on nukes. After he's saying, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this. And the Kaiser Sose principle says the other side has to think that you're 1% crazier than they are so that they become nervous. And there's a lot of commentary that went around when Reagan was elected that there were people inside the Iranian government at that time, and it was an early government. It hadn't been around for 50 years. It was the now volatile government, but they actually thought Reagan was bonkers. They thought he was insane and willing to use, nukes and things, and that got the hostage crisis moving. So I think what happened is he went in with a hard negotiating position. I think Iran blinked a little bit and said, okay, let's discuss this. And I think there were other people working on it. I think China was working on it because now we know China is in a crude oil deficit right now. They're in a shortage right now, and they're feeling true economic pinch. So I think then he comes out with this and finishing it up, showing that he can say F you on one hand, but then at the other side, he's saying, God bless the people of Iran. He wants them to see that as well, Pat. He wants the citizens to see that last line.
Colin, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the tariff playbook because he did a similar sort of negotiating tactic back last April where he makes these very extreme, almost like seemingly very irrational positions. He goes really far to one side, probably doesn't really mean that, And it forces the other side to come to the middle a little bit. And this seems to be part of the Trump negotiating playbook, you know? So he's doing the same thing here. Is it the most diplomatic way to do all of this? I don't know. Probably not. But at the same time, I mean, this is probably, I mean, considering we're only about 6 weeks in, this is starting to look like about as good of an outcome as we could probably
Why
expect.
do you say that? Why
I
do you
mean,
say that?
2 days ago, it seemed like, you know, maybe something really bad was going to happen, that this was going to escalate, that we were going to have boots on the ground. And so now you're getting into a position where it looks like this is really coming to a close. Everybody, I think, wanted an off-ramp for this thing, and here we are. So I think that, you know, that he did the same thing with the, if you remember the tariffs, he said 6 weeks. I'll make a 6-week deal with you. I'll make a 6-week deal with you. I'll make a 6-week deal with you. And he did that for months and months and months. And it was slowly an off-ramp for everybody getting off of the tariffs there. And the same thing's sort of happening here where, you know, he says 2 weeks. I think, you know, frankly, I think this thing really, the market's probably bottomed a week ago. Oil probably peaked a week ago. So I think we were starting to find a bottom in a lot of this stuff. And that's going to play out. I mean, Trump is a master of building a wall of worry for the market. And so, you know, all of this stuff is a persistent worry. But really, markets look ahead of that. The economy looks ahead of that.
Yeah, it's true. And Rob, if you want to pull up the Market Watch numbers, crude oil is down $20, okay, from 112 to 92, down 18%. Dow Jones futures up 2.7, S&P futures up 2.67, NASDAQ futures up 3.5, gold is up 3%, up to $4,800, silver's up 7.73%, and then you have Bitcoin is up to $71,000. And, you know, some of the stuff is happening. But, Brandon, do you have a opposing opinion on, okay, I want to hear that. Go for it.
I sure do.
Go ahead.
So, listen, I'm supporting Trump. I hope like everything he does is the best thing for the country. You know, I support him this whole time and everything. But I think he stumbled upon the fact here that we've put ourselves in the terrible position of not being equipped to deal with a situation like this. You know, Ukraine went through, I believe, 10 years of weapons that were built in the first 5 weeks of the Ukraine war. So we've been seeing it in the headlines for the last 4 years. There's huge shortages of these defense missiles we've been using. And I don't think we have the capacity to keep this up for much longer. You know, the oil is the one thing, but yeah, sure, we're the best military in the world. We have the most advanced technology, but we've had our manufacturing hollowed out over the last several decades. So that's the most unsettling thing to me. I think that's what we need to be putting our effort in behind the scenes, is to ramp that back up, because we're not in a position to carry this out if we wanted to. So yes, I agree that the Kaiser Soze thing, I don't think Trump's crazy or unhinged or rag. I think he was acting that way to try to scare them into something that was palatable, but I don't think this is an optimal outcome at all. I think we're in a worse situation than we were before he started this thing, because now Iran has realized, okay, we could flip this switch of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, which they didn't even blockade it. They just have the mere threat of a drone hitting a ship that's going through. So it's not like they're moving ships out of the way when you say they're clearing the strait. They're just promising not to drone strike any boats that go through. So I don't even know if boats are going to have the courage to go through it, even though they're saying, yeah, there's a ceasefire. Yeah, we're not going to do anything to you.
So who wins from this? Because for me, you know, Trump's negotiation, when people are like, I can't believe he said this, I can't believe he said, stop being surprised with what he says. I mean, he made that, you should have already been baptized to that in 2015 when he started campaigning on this stuff. They're rapists, they're sending their wars, they're this. He's been doing a shock job, you know, to get people to react to it for a long time. So I do think you have to act crazier. I do think you have to act like you have nothing to lose. I do think you have to kind of come from that strength position, and especially when you're dealing with people from Iran. That part I agree with. But I just sent a poll to Rob, and I want to see what our audience is going to say, because our audience is fairly reasonable. Who do you think won in this ceasefire? Iran, U.S., or too early to tell?
Iran's in a better position than they were before, because they have more leverage over the U.S. and the rest of the world now.
Do you agree, Tom?
No.
Tell me why.
Now, I think Iran agreeing to a ceasefire, I don't know, you see how you say they win, because basically we're about to escalate from military targets, and we hit another military target on Karg Island 2 days ago. So they know what's coming, and they know what's next. And you're talking about power plants, you're talking about that, you're talking about the pumping station on Karg Island. They're one step from that. And so do they win technically? Yeah, they win not being more fully destroyed, but I don't think they win anything in a ceasefire, because we're not saying, I've had enough, let's have a ceasefire. We're saying to them, have you had enough? Do you want a ceasefire? Have you had enough?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But think about it like this: like, how frequently do we disagree with Iran in terms of they want something, we want something different? Pretty frequently, right? So they've now realized that they could simply put out the threat of, hey, anything that goes through the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to knock it out. We're going to hit it with a drone and shut down global traffic there. Like, they didn't have that before. You know, and we wanted them to stop doing that and couldn't make them stop by brute force. You know, that's an objective fact. I don't think we were able to do that. You know, I think we would have done that if we were able to do it.
So you're saying, okay, so let me give some stats here. 92% of Iran's largest vessels destroyed. That's 140 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Iran's missile drone attack rate down 90% from week one. The death rate for Iran is at, 10,000 killed, nearly 1,000 civilians, 7,000 military personnel. That's for the first 34 days. We're at what days right now? We're at
39, I believe.
39 days. Okay, so 4 million people have displaced, 3.2 million in Iran, 1.2 million in Lebanon. So when you look at that, and then the argument, Tom, is made by some people saying, I do think you just gave Iran a 2-week timeout. And that 2-week timeout is for them to go out there and figure out other ways on what to do with Russia and China, because this negotiation was involving who? Pakistan is the one that brokered it. They said China made a phone call to get Iran to kind of be like, hey, listen, this is a good thing for you to do. So China was involved in helping with this. But what do you think Iran's going to be doing next 2 weeks?
I think China's the winner, actually. It's funny you mentioned them because, I mean, you look at everybody in the room here, China all of a sudden looks like the adult in the room. And I think their negotiating position in terms of everything involving Taiwan, I mean, that's my big worry. I typically look at big geopolitical risks like this, the tariffs last year, even this thing I said, this can't last. This won't last more than a few weeks. It's just politically it can't. You can't go into the midterms with $4 gasoline and 6.5% mortgage rates. It's impossible. It's a narrative killer. And so, but the geopolitical risk that is extremely worrisome in the long run is China going into Taiwan, because it disrupts so many things. That has the potential to turn into such a big flare-up. China's position, I think, across the board has strengthened sequentially across time as we get closer and closer to that potential inevitability.
Yeah, and by the way, while this is happening, Israel's like, look, Netanyahu says he backs Trump's ceasefire with Iran, but he says the deal excludes Lebanon. Why would he say that, Tom?
Because he's working on creating a buffer zone in Lebanon similar to what they created in Gaza. I mean, let's just objectively look at the attacks. Let's look at where it is, and that's what's going on. And what did he have in the hills of Lebanon, up there on the northern border? He had problems. He had a combination of independent and Hezbollah had strike areas up there. You can check me on that. But I think what he's looking at is saying, listen, Iran was funding and arming Hezbollah. They were here in my backyard on the northern border. I'm going to go take care of this as part of taking care of Iran. Now, you don't have to agree or disagree with Israel, Pat, but that's what they said. And so they're saying, I'm not done with these guys over here, Hezbollah. I regard them as my problem across from my border. They're in Lebanon. Tough. I'm going to finish this. And I think that's what Israel is saying. Whether you agree or disagree, they are creating a buffer.
You know what's kind of annoying?
What's that?
I mean, wasn't this something that they care deeply about, what was happening with Iran? Israel.
You talking about Israel?
Yeah, and something they were kind of invested in terms of like
Sure.
caring about the outcome.
You think Israel is happy about the ceasefire?
I don't, but I'm not happy about the fact that they had any attention at all on a whole different country, different conflict, when we were doing something that was helpful for them. Like, shouldn't they be allocating the resources to do everything they could to help us? I know they were taking out some leaders with precision airstrikes and everything, but I mean, you shouldn't be sending out your resources to something completely different, unrelated, if you have this big thing that you're supposedly invested in.
Tom, what do you think?
So what do I think? I think that two things about Israel in this. I thought they should have been participating, and I thought they were selective about, well, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put boots in the ground over here, but I'm going to do this over here. Wait a minute. You were lobbying for this. You had intelligence. You had your own Mossad. This is not a dispute, what I'm about to say. You had multiple Mossad mini camps and infiltrators all through the arid regions of Iran that were snooping out where you had, training facilities, small drone airstrips, all these things, and you had buckets of this intelligence, and you're out there, and you've openly said, I want this Iran to be put down because they were funding Hezbollah and Hamas that were causing problems for me right here. Regardless of whether you agree or disagree with their intelligence reports, they were already there. So why don't you step up and be part of the solution that is actually benefiting you? And I thought they should have. And I think it's kind of selective, Pat, in my opinion, to say, well, I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to do that. Oh, you ceasefire over there. Thanks for your help. Wait a minute. Israel complicated the first 2 weeks of the war when they killed more people than they had told us that they were aiming at. That's a fact. And even Trump said, well, there was a couple guys we kind of liked.
They keep killing them.
And they keep killing them.
Yeah.
Who's they?
Yeah.
Trump was saying that. He said, well, there was one guy we thought we liked. Like, even he wasn't sure, but he said, but they killed him.
Yeah.
So,
so you can't.
Sorry to rant, Pat.
No, I'm with you. But you think in a situation like this, Israel's sitting around saying, I'm glad the ceasefire happened?
No.
Or you think they're sitting around saying, let's finish this because we could have just emboldened Iran to give a timeout for them to go back and re-strategize?
They'd like to see a lot of these neighbors gone.
Israel.
I think they would have liked to. I mean, frankly,
specifically
I think they've
Iran.
been jerking us around. I mean, I think they roped us into this whole thing, and they would have loved to see this go on for a much longer time period than it has here. So I don't know. I look at it and I keep coming back to, why are we fighting their fight in a lot of ways here? I mean, they're big boys. They've got big guns. They've got big missiles too. So I don't know why they needed us to come in and start fighting their fight, because they're perfectly capable of fighting this
How many
fight on their
military
own.
bases do we have around the Gulf? How many military bases do we have around the Gulf, Rob? What's the number?
At least a few dozen, probably.
Yeah, that's the problem is the number used to be we had 780 military bases around the world. Okay, I don't know what the numbers around Gulf. I want to know exactly how many military bases does the U.S. have in the Gulf. And the only reason I'm saying this, I'm looking at this because to answer your question, for U.S. to be involved, if you wonder if Israel attacks Iran and the war is one-on-one, what is Iran going to do?
Win.
Well, not Iran's going to win. How would Iran retaliate if it's 1v1? If it's a 1v1 war, okay, it says 8 to 10 major U.S. military bases in the Gulf region is what we have. 2 in Qatar, 1 in Bahrain. Rob, go a little bit lower to see how many in Kuwait. 3 in Kuwait, 1 in UAE, 1 in Saudi. So you wonder, because what has Iran done so far with the war? You attack them. What do they attack? Gulf states. Mm-hmm. And then they want the Gulf states to call and say, hey, man, now we're being impacted by it. Can you guys stop?
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, hey, you're hitting me. Those are your best friends. I'm hitting them because they're weaker than you. And I'm saying, hey, hit those guys. And then they're calling him and they're saying, hey, Tom, this is getting a little bit out of control, man. I just got hit by this. How long do you think you're going to do this, Tom? How long are you going to go about this? Right. So they know he's not going to listen to me.
They were putting pressure on MBS. They were all calling MBS.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So to me, I think this is a part where Iran figured out what buttons to press to get the call back. And look, here's the reality of with the president. Vinny showed me something very important this morning. He says, look, and we've been kind of talking about this, but he says if Trump brokers a peace deal, Trump's a taco. Okay? If he brokers a peace deal. What a sissy. Cannot believe this. Iran won. If he drops a bomb on him, he's a what? War criminal. If he, didn't get involved, he's weak. So the reality of it is anybody who is critical of Trump, those that no matter what he does, he's never going to be getting the victory, period. But he knows in this situation, what his outcome is and what he wants to do. Nobody really knows how this is going to go. I will tell you, if it goes ceasefire, and right now the 10 points that they're talking about, who knows if these 10 points are right or not. I'm just saying these are the 10 points that are spreading. Number 1 is no further U.S. attacks on Iran. Number 2, Iran keeps control of Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, that is a lot of power to give to lots of power.
And that's why I'm saying they win.
I know. That's a lot of power to Strait of Hormuz. Recognition of Iran's nuclear enrichment rights, lift all sanctions, end UN and IAEA resolutions against Iran, release frozen Iranian assets, U.S. withdrawal forces from the region, compensation for Iran's war damages, formal non-aggression guarantees, binding UN Security Council agreement. People are saying this is not true, but this is what's spreading. So what I'm reading to you is what a lot of people are saying, that this is what's on the line.
Right.
You know, but we're going to see what's going to be negotiated. If it comes out and they get anywhere close to this, Iran won.
Yeah, 100%.
Iran won in a big way. And then guess what happens? You think they're going to sit on the sidelines and not do anything the next 2-3 decades?
Nope.
I don't think so. I think they just got bolder. I think they just got tougher. I think they just got stronger. And they're going to come out and timing, just, you know, especially if this kind of income is not going to be coming in every year, what types of weapons do you think they're going to have in their arsenal?
Oh, yeah.
What type of investments do you think they're going to be making? What do you think they're going to go back to doing? You think they're just going to sit and not do anything about it? You know how they said the money that was sent to him, to Iran, that, hey, he was going to build bridges, he was going to do this to Iran, all those monies went to what? Weapons. They were waiting. Some of it went to them, some of it went to... So, I don't know. I think it's too early to tell. I'm not a fan of the ceasefire. Right now, I'm not. I just think ceasefires are not going to be kept by anybody. I think we claim we agreed to a ceasefire, and what did we do? We attacked. You know, Iran claimed, and then boom, same thing happened with Ukraine and Russia. Remember how many times I said, oh, we agreed to a ceasefire, and instantly, hours later, there was an attack. So I don't know how much. Historically, ceasefires have never worked. Okay. Historically.
Can I recommend an idea to the president?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
So, you know, one of the most controversial things of all time, I think would work perfectly here, the Iran-Contra affair, where we built an arms manufacturing base secretly in a place close to Nicaragua to send arms to the rebels to help them overtake the communist regime. So, need to build an arms manufacturing facility in something like Saudi Arabia, somewhere close by, and just get as many guns as possible into Iran, into the hands of citizens there, because it's not going to be like, you know, when you say, what does like finishing the thing look like? How do you finish them? You can take out as many leaders as you want, but there's still 25% of the population that supports the IRCG. So there's always going to be somebody that pops up and will take the leadership. So it needs to be a civil war type of situation. Right now, the population that's against the regime isn't equipped for a civil war. So if we could equip them for a civil war, it's not something that happens overnight.
How you do it, though? Go ahead and do it.
Put an arms manufacturing facility as close as possible to Iran and smuggle it in. It's a long-term thing, not something that's going to happen overnight. But aside from that, yeah, the two options are either let them win or just nuke the country. So because you can kill as many leaders as you want, but there's still millions of people there.
Let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. Day one of the war versus today. Do you think the world is looking at Iran and they're saying how weak they are? Or do you think they're looking at Iran and saying, okay, they're more capable and strategic than we thought we are? What would they are? What do you think the world is saying?
They have more power than we thought. And part of that is
what do you think?
Yeah, I think that they're more resilient than I thought.
Right.
It's taken a long time to take it to this level, and they're still kind of standing. This is surprising. I think that's what they're saying. And by the way, Iran already has an arms manufacturing factory. It's called China. And if you don't think that in the net, by the way,
for itself though, for the government.
Well, you asked me who I thought won the ceasefire. That's different from whether I think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. And number one, and number two, I think we've just given them a training. So now they're going to figure out different techniques to use, and they're going to figure out ways to do it. And if this is really impacting China's economy, then guess what? China is the arms manufacturing factory that's going to help Iran.
But that's the helping the government. I'm talking about smuggling weapons to the citizens there. Like, we need a rebel group to form that's against the government. Like, that's not for the IRCG. So that's what I'm saying with that. But
yeah, no. But going back to it. So if you're talking about doing that, what I'm trying to say is the following: if like the war with Ukraine and Russia, when they started attacking, what was the first thing everybody thought?
Russia's going to win.
Russia's going to what?
They're just going to walk in and take all that country back. Humpty Dumpty, USSR is getting rebuilt.
What happened?
It became a quagmire.
But why, though? This is different. These are two different stories, but similar. The reason why it's different is who had Ukraine's back?
All of Europe and the U.S.
and
democratic regime.
So
Biden.
Russia was by themselves. Of course, they got a couple other people that are helping them out, but they realized, wait a minute, that's not enough, and Ukraine is destroying you with the smaller the little drones that they're building. You know, $2,000 drones, $20,000 drones flying into $4 million tanks. You know, whatever, $4 million equipment, explosion, right? Okay, but they had backing. Iran did this with who backing them up? Not that much from anybody.
No.
If you think about it.
No one that would admit it.
No one that would admit it, but maybe a little bit, but not that much. So to me, I don't know. To me, if this goes the way it's going. So if you're saying, well, let's give weapons to their people. Well, if U.S. and Israel went after Iran thinking there's going to be a regime change or regime collapse, if the IRGC still runs Iran after the ceasefire, there is no regime collapse or regime change.
That's correct.
Yeah, no.
Let me say it again. If IRGC still runs Iran, there was no regime change or a regime collapse.
Right.
So if you give weapons to the people, you think the people are going to have better weapons than America and Israel has? No. So I don't even think that's going to work. I don't even think that's going to work.
I think you need a civil war there.
Yeah, the difference between a civil war that we had in America versus a civil war in Iran is the civil war in Iran, the government is willing to kill its own people.
Right.
It's a very different kind of a civil war. It's not the civil war that you think about. Yesterday I was talking to Jiang, the guy that's, he made the prediction with, I said, so tell me what it's like, the climate in China. I said, what does China say when it comes down to COVID? He says, China's position is that U.S. funded a bioweapon and they dropped it, and that's what the mainstream media said in China. I said, really? Yeah, the state media, because he's in Beijing right now. I said, how many Chinese question that narrative? He says, you don't understand, that's not the culture in China. What the state media says, guess what you do?
Yeah,
you buy, okay? Because that's the culture that is in China. So in Iran, the state media says what? Do you know the state media? There's a clip of a guy on state media saying, hey, parents, send your kids to get killed in the war, okay? Send your kids because it's the right thing to do. Rob, I don't know if you have it in the notes or not. I send it to you. Maybe you have one of the two. One of them is very aggressive. The other one is, here, let me send this to you. I just texted it to you, Rob, if you want to go to it and find it. But it's in my note. There you go, that one right there. Watch this. This is footage earlier, but look how they're speaking. Go back a little bit. Go ahead. Mothers and fathers. Take your children's hand by hand, come to the streets. Do you want your sons to be a man?
آمده وسط
like
میدان
a hero?
میونداری داره میکنه میدونداری میکنه مامانا باباها بچه‌ها رو بفرستید این شبا
Send your children at night to the
مرد
road
میشن
your child will turn into what? What was the last word?
Men.
Turn into men. That's state media. That's state media. So you think a civil war is going to work in Iran like the way you think, even with weapons? The government will gladly kill their own people. So listen, the debate of if you're going to do it or not, we're past it. We're here now. If you want to get the job done, you either have to show up and get it done. If you don't, you just emboldened Iran in ways we've never seen. Because if IRGC is still in charge, there was not a regime collapse, there was not a regime change, they're still in control. And if you think they're thinking 6 months, they can't wait for Trump to be out, somebody else will come in. 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, it'll be a 9/11 times 10. And then they're going to sit back and say, well, let me tell you, we should have finished the job 20 years ago. They're not going to stop. They right now feel so confident. They right now feel so confident about themselves.
What does going all the way look like to you? Like 10 out of 10, like extreme in terms of trying to take it out all the way? Because that's what I'm stuck on.
I agree with you. I don't think there's winning here for him. I think whatever he does, I think if they go out and take out Iran, Republicans lose midterms, AOC is going to be the president in 2028, or Newsom. Newsom's wife, the more she speaks, the more she hurts him. She's horrible. But I think you're winning for 20 years from now. You're not winning for the next 6, 12 months. If the president's doing what he's doing right now for midterms, then you're thinking marketing and PR-wise. You're not thinking long-term America.
Yeah.
You're not thinking long-term war, protection.
Can you win this war long-term? I mean, this is a war that's been going on for thousands of years, basically, right?
With IRGC, Iran used to be very peaceful under Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. They were allies with everybody. They got along with everybody. There was no issues in the Middle East when it was Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. Nothing. There was no issues. Go look at the death toll. Nothing. They weren't picking on anybody.
Have you seen the historical pictures of the citizens? They were not wearing hijabs. It looked like a Western country, and it was actually Hollywood people like Frank Sinatra used to go there on vacation and ski.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to me because historically, you look at the region, there's always been a conflict there.
Right.
Like, isn't there always going to be a conflict there?
There's always going to be a conflict there. But if you
this
look
is a different adversary. When you see clips like that, like they're fighting a different war than the war that we think of.
I know.
To us, this is an economic war. This is a war for our living standards and things like that. This is theological to these people.
To the extremists, which is the 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
The 80% don't want this. The 80% are begging for this thing to be done. The 80% are begging for the IRGC to be gone. By the way, look at Gulf states. In UAE, you can't act like that. You're going to jail. Crime is low in UAE. Crime is low in Dubai. Crime is low in these steps out. They're not going to tolerate this behavior. So even the Gulf states have now said, look, we want to have a good relationship with the West. Even Turkey wants to have a good relation with the West. Iran is a different animal in a big way. And if they continue and they keep getting stronger, like this event comes out and they stay stronger, you're going to have this issue to come up for decades to come, and I don't think it's going to slow down. I think they're going to get tougher. And but again, short term, I don't think there's a win. The win is only a long-term win, 10 to 20 years. I don't think there's any short-term win. And the noise in media is so loud. The noise in media is so flippin' loud just to see the power of the message. Every time somebody comments something negative, the first thing I do is I go to their account and I say, no, this guy's real. He started his account 9 years ago. And then I go, this guy started his account a week ago in April of 2026. You're a bot.
No followers.
And by the way, it's not everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can cop out and say everyone's a bot. No. Some people are converters of the bot's influence, that their brain got rotted to believe that is happening. But my concern is this thing, if ceasefire goes, Iran's going to come out and say, we beat the biggest empire in the world and against Israel. Imagine you're on TV and you're going to say, Israel and U.S. tried to take us out and they failed. We were right. And the Iranian people are like, oh, shit. Now what do? We have to listen to exactly what they're going to be saying now moving forward. If you thought they were extreme, they're about to double down on their
I don't think people realize how much of a stranglehold Iran has over the global oil market. I mean, that was really the crux of why this ended up being as difficult as it was, is because people woke up and realized, like, holy cow, they don't even have to actually drop bombs in the Strait. They just have to threaten to drop bombs in the Strait, and you can shut down the global oil market to a large degree.
And they're thinking deeply about the future. Financial Times reported this morning that in addition to the toll booth that they want to put together, and Oman says, hey, I can help you with that, they want $1 per barrel of oil that goes through the Strait of Hormuz. That's the toll that Iran says it wants. And it doesn't want euros. It doesn't want U.S. dollars, petrodollars. It wants crypto. Why? Because you can't seize crypto later.
You can't tolerate that.
You can't freeze assets.
You can't tolerate that if that's actually.
What do you mean you can't tolerate? Don't you think that's strategic on their behalf?
Yeah, it is. But
there it is.
That breaks everything, though.
What do you mean that breaks everything?
Well, now you can't freeze the bank account when it's crypto.
That undermines the petrodollar
This
system.
tells me that they're thinking a step ahead.
Guess what? They're going to be like, look, you guys in the U.S. are all about crypto now. Why not just pay us in crypto? Why are you not doing that? So I'm telling you, you have to respect a vicious, nasty, divisive, creative, critical thinking enemy. And these guys, they're doing, by the way, even marketing, they've done such a good job. Even propaganda, they've done such a good job. And to ask something like this, but go back to what you were saying. So what power did Iran have with Strait of Hormuz with oil pre the attack? And what level of power will they have with Strait of Hormuz post-attack, depending on negotiation? What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, they obviously, I think they always had this power just because, geographically, like you've done great work on that. Geographically, I mean, it's so easy for them to control because of the sheer, the mountainous region of it. It's almost impossible for, a foreign invader to put boots on the ground and actually control that region the way that Iran can. So, I mean, there's a lot of strategists who have known this, and it's why I think people were always very tepid about doing something like, invading Iran, in part because this disruption was always so front and center. Going forward now, though, it's become so obvious to everybody that, hey, Iran plays a much bigger role in the global oil market than we suspected, and that's not going to change going forward.
Big X factor, though, is the drones, because it's not even like you have to put a blockade there now. Like before, people were worried about them blockading or putting mines in the water. But now they can make these drones in their garage for a couple $1,000s, and just the mere threat of that will stop people from going through. So I think the drones have made the Strait of Hormuz chokehold even more powerful.
Yeah, it's interesting how much the technology is starting to change now and influence the way the militaries are fighting, because you're seeing these autonomous vehicles increasingly play such a big role that even a poorer country can actually defend itself pretty well against the United States.
Yeah, $10,000 drone could take out a multi-billion-dollar ship.
Such a great case study.
It is
such a great case study.
So guess what? I'm a small oil nation. I will never have enough troops to do anything in the name of traditional warfare. Nor will anybody sell me airplanes. I can't get the the Mirages and the Exocets, all those things that used to happen that where Arab countries would buy from France. I can't get that. Nor can I get stuff from the United States. But I've got billions and billions and billions of dollars. I will never have enough troops. There's your case study, Pat. But guess what? All of a sudden, overnight, I got 10,000 drones. I got 10,000 drones. Guess what? Little old me is now a military power in my region.
Yeah.
And the only question is, what payload do I have on them, and what is the sophistication of the electronics to keep, because you can shoot down drones with a variety of electronic things. But this is exactly what we're talking about. It's no longer who's got the biggest army line up on both sides like Rome or Braveheart.
The question, Tom, for sure, but how many of these shipping companies are even going to trust the ceasefire? Like, here's one of the biggest
They're going to wait.
Right? Look at when the story just came out 5 hours ago.
I don't understand why we're talking about shipping companies. They didn't close the Gulf. Lloyd's of London closed the Gulf. The insurance guy closed it. So if Mayor is cautious on Straits of Hormuz, my question is, do they have insurance, and from who?
Well,
that's really what closed the, remember? Lloyd said, you're not covered on insurance. And everybody said, well, I don't want the risk, and I have no insurance.
The president said he would take the risk.
And we said that we would make the United States Insurance Company. And we said...
And then they said, well, we're worried about the lives of the people, too. That was their next excuse after the insurance. But, I mean, through the prism of the insurance company, would you feel comfortable insuring boats going through the...
Rob, how many have already gone through this morning? Do we?
I don't think any.
Has anything been reported that anything's gone through yet?
I saw a report right before I left the hotel that there was a ship going through.
There was one going through? You know where it was from?
I'm not sure.
Can you pull up, Rob, to see who it was?
It's the Strait. They have a Strait tracker. Sounds like straight jacket if you say it fast.
Restricted today. I just want to know how many went through today. Are there any? So it says 10 ships in transit. Is there any other place to go see this, Rob? If anything's gone through?
10 ships.
Interesting. If he's saying, if Cullen is saying one went through, I'd be curious to know who that one was.
Right here,
where
ships
from.
transiting now 7.
7 right now.
Over the last
24 hours, 10.
Normal daily activity.
60.
They're at 10%.
So can you find out if those 10 that went the last 24 hours paid anything to Iran? Those 10 that went through the last 24 hours, did they pay anything to Iran?
Great question.
I'm curious to know if they're already demanding that and if the world is organically accepting the terms. You know, to say, look, just pay the guy.
I saw a report that Trump was saying that they're going to split the tolls. I don't know how, truthful that is, but he said he was going to try to negotiate some way to split the tolls.
Yes, some ships have reportedly paid. In some cases,
I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
What do you think about that 50-50 split ownership?
I don't know. It seems like a
Trump thing.
This seems like sort of a classic government, snafu, where the government does something, overplays its hand, and then all of a sudden they're taxing everybody. Because who ultimately pays for all this stuff? I mean, taxes don't get paid by nobody. Taxes ultimately get paid by people who are consuming. So all of this, what does it do in the long run? It drives up, inflation marginally, and ultimately people who consume oil end up paying for all of this. So I don't know.
Yeah, those prices will get passed on to the consumer.
Exactly.
We'll see. I mean, look, the reality of it is, do you think the president's going to come out of this without him not seeming like the, victor in the negotiation?
Yeah, no, make it sound good.
Not sound. It has to be, because today, guys will filter out sound versus it being good.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be good. Like I can't see if any of those 10 terms happen, Iran won.
Yeah.
If that 10 stuff I just read that happens, there's no way he's going to let that happen.
I'd be shocked if he did.
There's no way he's going to let that happen. There's no way he's going to let that happen. I don't think. I don't think he's going to let that happen.
I think at this point, Trump's win is, do they win the midterms? Do they even split the midterms at this point? Because now, I mean, God, a month ago, the Senate, there was almost no chance the Senate was going to go Democrat. And in the last, 10 days, it's 50-50 now, which is kind of crazy to think.
North Carolina, which he won 3 times, a guy's running in North Carolina, a senator, Democrat, who I think the last time he won by 3 points, the president did. The North Carolina race is now going potentially Democrat, Senate race. So I don't know.
To me, that's an economic issue. To me, that is
affordability.
And this is why I don't like the ceasefire. The ceasefire, somebody, I said last night on Twitter that the problem with what's going on is that you've got a flow-through effect economically from the way these prices are going to be reported in things like CPI and in all the economic data, where you could get into a point where we're into, say, the middle of June, July, August, where inflation is still high in all of the readings, in large part because the year-over-year oil prices are just going to be so high in comparison. You've got to get, you even look at the prices today, like people are saying, oh, the price is down so much. The price is still $92. It was $60 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we're up 50%.
Yep.
Still. So you need another 30-40% decline in oil prices to get back to just where we were. And we already had an inflation problem before any of this started.
Yep.
There was some tiptoeing by the Fed around, can we actually cut rates more? Or do we need to start, being more cautious about all this? So
there's unemployment real, there's all these things that handcuff the
labor
Fed.
market looks weak, so there's so many things that were already going on. And this kind of throws a wrench in so many of those narratives where, you need oil back down to $60 yesterday at this point. Otherwise, with the ceasefire, the way traders are going to look at this, they look at a ceasefire and they say, okay, we know that the risks are reduced, but we need to hedge our bets still, because what if something transpires in the next 2 weeks where, oil potentially goes back to $115? So they're looking at this and they're kind of waffling on this. They're not going to, oil traders aren't going to take this right back to $60 anytime soon, because now they're looking at it and they say, well, there's still a 2 week window of risk here at least. So I would have preferred to see something that was definitive, where you were able to actually look at this and say, this is a done deal. This isn't a ceasefire. This is over. And at least in terms of the economics of what's going on.
Yeah, because the pressure is never going to be as high as it was 24 hours ago. Now it's gone. And the time that you're able to negotiate exactly what you want is when? And the pressure's at the highest. You think the pressure is going to get any higher than 24 hours ago? I don't think so. I think you just lose a lot of leverage for negotiation. There's time to break. There's time to rest. There's time to think. There's time to re-strategize. There's time now to think, make maneuvers, move people from different areas, assume what's going to happen next. They've shown they're pretty ready for the east of Iran in case something happens with those mountains. I don't know. Look, my heart breaks. Let me tell you where I go to. Of course, I'm an American, but I was born and raised in Iran. And when the Iran revolution happened and the war with Iraq, I sympathize with the families and the parents, how scared they are today. I saw the other day Armenians were celebrating Easter at an Armenian church, and Armenians were in the church. It reminded me of when I was a kid, and we'd go to these churches with my mom and my sister, or we'd go to this Assyrian church down the street from my grandmother's old house that she would live there. Rosa with Johnny and Victor, and we would go to her house right after the church, and it was a great experience. And how afraid we were of what could happen. The wars, when my dad would put the black tapes on the window, me and my sister, I would sleep right by the window. I had a yellow Porsche a poster above my bed. When my dad would come and tape the windows on, I would ask, why are you taping the windows? He says, because the blast is not going to cause the windows to go out if we tape them. So you would come to every house. It's black tape windows there. I sympathize with these kids that just want to be free. I sympathize with these parents that are there that just want to do the right thing for their kids. That's hard, very hard. And I'd love nothing more for them to have similar liberties and freedoms that we have here in America. But unfortunately, as long as IRGC is in power, that'll never happen to them. They don't think that way. They are fanatical type of people. And then the argument can be for people to say, well, that's not our problem. That's their problem. I understand that logical libertarian argument. Trust me, I used to be a libertarian full on, where I would see that. And this morning I'm reading scripture, and I come across Psalms, and Psalms 82:4 says, "Rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked." Man, there's some wicked people in Iran, man, and they don't run it like you and I do. They don't live their lives like we do, but all we can do is pray. There's certain things that happens in your life that is out of your hands, and the only thing you can do in those moments is pray. God is a big God, and he's done things that seem impossible to the average person, and my faith is always going to be there to see what miracle could happen here. Anyways, we'll see. Having said that, let's get into the next story. While this is going on, the Pentagon comes out and asks for a 42% year-over-year hike in their budget with a $1.5 trillion defense budget that they're asking for 2026. And this is a barren story. Let me read this to you, and then we can go there, Rob. So 8 big winners from Trump's historic $1.5 trillion defense request. And Tom, I'm going to come to you. Rob, is that about this or no?
Yes, it's
Okay.
Kevin Hassett.
All right. So on Friday, Trump unveiled the fiscal's 2027 budget of $1.5 trillion. The $1.5 trillion number will be up 42%. And it's a historic increase not seen since the Korean War, when the annual defense budget jumped from $14 billion in 1950 to $33 billion in 1951, almost and $48 billion in 1952. The Navy is projected to see its ship budget more than double, $65.8 billion versus $27.2, wrote vertical research partner analyst Bob Stellard. Also seen a big jump in the Space Force. Its request of $71.2 billion represents 77% year-over-year increase. That is relatively good news for shipbuilders, General Dynamics, and Huntington Ingalls Industries, and for space startups, including Rocket Lab, Firefly Aerospace, and of course, privately held SpaceX. Huntington stock gains 2.8% on Monday. General Dynamics stock rose 0.7%. Rocket Lab stock went up 0.1%, and Firefly shares went up 5.8%. The Defense Department is also asking for 85 F-35 jets from Lockheed Martin, up from 47 in fiscal year 2026. The Army gets an increase in the Armored Multipurpose Vehicle, or AMPV, made by Britain's BAE. And, last but not least, both of those stocks, L3 Harris Technologies and RTX, have gained more than 65% over the last 12 months, leaving them trading for about 26 times estimated 2026 earnings. Tom, your thoughts on this?
So there's two things going on in here. One is forward, and the other is replenish. On the forward side, they're taking the things that have worked. The F-35 is working. We've just seen it work. And so they're like, we need more of what works. And some of those F-35s are going to find their way to Saudis. Some of them are going to find their way to Israel. There's a variety of places where we are going to have those and use them. And that's almost doubling the 47 that from the previous. Then there's replenish. We have been, every year, the defense budget, you buy bombs, you buy missiles, you don't use them. You buy surface-to-air, SAM, surface-to-air missiles. You buy air-to-air combat, all of the things that are out there. And now, guess what? We've been using them up. So there is a big, we got to, we just had everybody over to Grandma's house. We stayed there a week, and we had Thanksgiving. And as we leave, we need to make a Costco trip because we got to refill Grandma's pantry because we've eaten everything in her pantry. So we got to replenish all the bombs and stock and missiles and things that we've used up, number one. Number two, we're buying a bunch of stuff that works. And number three, we're discovering just how valuable Space Force is. And so we are radically increasing what's been spent on that. And lastly, war is really good for business if you're a defense contractor. The sad thing about war is they're the soulless, faceless defense contractors see it as a test bed, and they see it. They want war. They want border skirmishes. They want aircraft engagement with North Korea and China to just kind of test each other a little bit up there in the skies over the Sea of Japan. They want that, and this gives them an ability to test things. And so this is the price tag. This is the price tag of forward armament. This is the price tag of adding Space Force. This is also the price tag of refilling the pantry because we just used up all of our bombs.
Cullen.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a big number. In
Do you
totality,
support it? Do you support it? Do you think this is a good thing we're doing to get tighter and get more fighters?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not privy to, the crazy thing to me, these numbers are so big. I mean, where does $1.5 trillion even go? I like a lot of the aspects. I mean, here's one thing. In terms of long-term innovation, the U.S. military has actually had an incredible multiplier effect on the U.S. economy in the long run. So out of all of the places where we spend a lot of money, the military is one of these things where, whether it's the internet or, things like just the knock-on effect of all of the different technologies that go into a lot of this. I mean, you look at people like Palmer Luckey and people who are, incredible innovators. I mean, going to, the whole Space Force thing, people mocked that a few years ago, but now, controlling space and, who's got the most satellites, who's got the ability to see the rest of the world, that all of a sudden looks like the arguably the most important strategic, economic and military viewpoint of anything. So I don't know. There's a lot to like in here. I think the problem with these humongous numbers is you go back to things like, these audits of like the Pentagon where they're like, whoopsies, we lost a few $100 billion and we just don't know where it went. And it's like, how the hell does that happen?
Brandon.
Yeah, of all the things in the world that there are to piss me off, this is probably number one, because it's like the biggest or second biggest line item in the defense budget, after Medicare and Social Security. And it's an objective fact that 25% of the existing $800 billion gets lit on fire, right? It goes to nothing, just gets price gouged because we let these 4 defense contractors overcharge us because it went from 200 in the 90s after the Cold War to just 4 or 5 of them today. And when it comes to the defense contractors, they don't just want war, they need war. They would shrivel up and die without a war. Like, I'm of the belief that since World War II, we haven't had a necessary war. We've had wars that they've lobbied for, that they've fought hard for to get into. Whether it's the Korean War, whether it's the Cold War, whether it's the war against terror, whether it's the NATO against Russia, when Russia wanted to be part of NATO. All of those weren't necessary. They were necessary for the beast that was created during World War II, the military-industrial complex. Now, when it comes to this, I would cut it down to $500 billion, not increase to $1.5 trillion. Make them get the most out of what they're using right now, because they're not even spending the full $800 billion of it. $300 billion of it's going to waste. So, we're just going to make the number bigger so that the number that's wasted gets bigger? No, I'm not a fan of lighting money on fire, especially when it's taxpayer money and we're running a deficit every year and we're already at 40 trillion when we're just at 35 trillion. Like, that's where affordability.
I think a lot of people, day-to-day regular people, would side with you, and they would say that makes sense. Why are we doing it, right? But I think the better question to ask, Brandon, to be honest with you, is the following. I was in the military, and I would order parts for Humvees. And I would go to my Sergeant Braxton, if he's around. I haven't spoken to the guy for 20-some years. I love Sergeant Braxton. I would say, Sergeant Braxton, why is this lug nut, why is this ball joint, whatever, for the Hummer, $2,800? This is really a $400 product. Well, it's the government. We always overpay. That doesn't make any sense to me. So this is why I was excited about Doge.
Yeah.
Because we were going to get to the bottom of this. If you're running a business, you hire a new CEO, first thing they're going to look at it and say, let me renegotiate all the contracts. Why are we spending so much money with this? I'll never forget one of the things we did is we had a guy that would keep buying memberships because he controlled the company credit card. You would remember this guy. He bought 900. We were like, how many reoccurring things are we paying for? 900 things. I said, what? Yeah. So this guy comes in and audits, is like, we don't need to pay 900 different things of memberships that we had. So one by one, we don't need this, we don't need this, we need this, we need that. Okay. I think the bigger question here to ask is, you have 2 case studies. You have Russia and Ukraine, U.S., Israel, and Iran. And we both, all of us around the world, saw what became very powerful tool, drones. So I want to know what we're doing to change the strategy of the future wars. Whether it's going to be, if we go back and keep buying weapons the way we bought for decades, okay, fine. How much of it is going into the new warfare? How much of it is the defense against cyber warfare? Because people right now, when you're healthy, guess what you don't think about?
Your health.
When you're healthy, how do you eat when you're healthy?
Bad.
Whatever you want to eat. And then all of a sudden you have a heart attack. And then all of a sudden you have cancer. All of a sudden you go to the doctor and you're like, whoa. I remember one time I went to the doctor. The doctor's like, you may have, because I couldn't speak for 6 months. I literally lost my voice. Tom will remember this. This was how long ago? 15 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, 13 years ago. And I go to the same doctor that was Whitney Houston's doctor for your throat. And they went in, they said, there's something there. And it could be cancerous. And I was going to a trip to Hawaii. Monday, they said, we do the surgery. They came and cut it. When they cut it, it was Thanksgiving. I couldn't speak to anybody on Thanksgiving. If you're at Thanksgiving at my house, I'm texting you.
Wow.
So family people were talking shit to me, and I'm like, the only way I can respond back was in text, right? So until you have experienced cyber warfare, you don't think about the importance of it. Until the system, the grid is taken out and we don't have power and it's in the cold and a cold front comes and you're like, wait a minute, the power of a heater, you're not thinking about it. Until the banking system is hit, until you look up in the sky and says, how the hell are there 10,000 drones coming and you see things blowing up, you're not going to be thinking about the importance of this. So I don't know. I think there's a part of me that's like, let's stay tight. There's another part of me that's like, look, man, we got to make investments in future potential warfare to protect us against crazy players, especially after we just killed the top 50 most powerful, highest ranking people in a country that they're not ceasing to exist, and they're going to keep the power? And you want me not to protect the military? I don't know. And then you go to the other side of military-industrial complex, so you see all these stocks that they're going up. You're like, hey, man, it's like a very good. They're like, hey, another war. No, keep it going. Keep the war going. We're making money. Keep it going. We need war. We need war.
Yeah.
I understand all the arguments, but I'm always going to lean more on insurance, preventative measures long-term than, cheap, being too cheap today.
I'm with you, and I'm totally open to that. Like for a long time, I was with the mindset of like, you know what? Fine, we spend as much as the remaining 10 mil. We spend as much as the next 10 militaries combined in the world. Okay, fine. We're the most safe country in the world. Fine, sure. We get taxed a lot to pay for that. Fine, okay. But when you tell me that we're running out of military equipment to go against a country that's much smaller than us, we better have every single measure that we need in any possible situation. We don't have that. So how's that possible? For the last 20 years, we've been spending at that rate, and we don't have everything we need. Well, which shows it wasn't spent well.
No, and let me show you something. Let me show you something that I think this is the tweet of the week. Rob, I'm going to send you these both. And I want you to pull them up. Specifically, pull up the other one that actually breaks down the numbers, okay? NASA just recently, the Artemis II went into space, okay? Mm-hmm. And in one tweet that's going viral is this tweet by Gunter Eagleman. He's got some interesting tweets that he puts out. NASA Artemis II, $4 billion. The California bullet train, $126 billion. NASA Artemis II started planning in 2017. The other one started in 96. Passengers 4. Passengers in California 0. Miles traveled 695,000 miles traveled. Miles traveled for the bullet train in California 0. And by the way, you know what's crazy? As crazy as this is that people are making this comparison of how much it costs for NASA to do it versus the bullet train, do you know what the numbers are if you look at what Elon does? When he's got his launches, we've done this before. I think one of the episodes.
Compared to NASA and SpaceX.
The Falcon 9 is $67 million per launch. The space shuttle for NASA is $450 to $1.5 billion. The Falcon Heavy that Musk does, $97 million per launch. The one that they do is $4 billion. And as crazy as this sounds, guess who was in Newsom's backyard for a couple decades?
Musk.
Guess who he could have gone to and say, hey, Musk, can I talk to you? What's that? Hey, man, we're spending $120-some billion on this. It's like, I got the money. How the hell do we do this to make it cheaper instead of spend all the money that's not working? Can you help me out? No. Instead, what does he do? During COVID, doesn't allow Tesla people to do their thing. And then he's like, screw you, I'm going to Austin. It's these types of things that the American people see, and they see waste and say, I don't want to give you a single penny for something like this. I don't want to give you a single penny for this. So I get the argument, but if they do it right.
It's like they don't have an ownership mentality. They have like a pillaging mentality. If everybody had a collective ownership mentality of America, then they wouldn't pillage the country the way that
I'm going to get to this next story, and Cullen, I'm going to come to you first. So be careful how you answer this question. There's a lot of pressure with this story, so I want you to be ready for it. Americans are increasingly saying they won't pay their taxes this year as a political protest. Okay? Here's what could happen to them according to Market Watch. Everybody wants to know what Cullen thinks. Hang tight. Let me read it to you, then I'm coming to you. Here we go. When Jovan Granado Gomez completed paperwork for his new job, he carried out an act of protest by checking off one box. A 25-year-old cook in Phoenix checked exempt on the tax form that tells his employer whether to withhold the money from his paycheck for federal income taxes. Checking exempt means his employer won't withhold any of his pay for federal taxes, allowing Granado Gomez to keep the money himself instead of paying the money to the Internal Revenue Service to fund government operations that he does not support. Those include the war in Iran, the Trump administration's immigration crackdown, and what he sees as too little funding for healthcare and education. At some point, the only way to get financial release, start hearing out our pleas, is if we stop paying them the money, he says, this 25-year-old. People's reasons for wanting to opt out of paying taxes vary. The war in Iran, immigration arrest by ICE, illegal immigration in the first place, the Epstein files, the military operation in Venezuela, waste, fraud, abuse, and public assistance programs, and so on. But they all point to fury that bridging the political spectrum. The failure to pay penalty is 0.5% of unpaid tax, and it builds to 25% the longer the sum goes unpaid. The failure to file the penalty is 5%, also eventually building to 25%. And the IRS charges 7% interest on those penalties that compound daily. Should people pay their taxes or should they protest?
Yes, pay your taxes. I mean, aside from the fact that jail is no fun, I mean, these are like the most punitive interest rates that you're ever going to see. I mean, this makes, you know, the high credit card rates almost look friendly. So I don't know. It's interesting thinking about all this in the context of everything else we've kind of been discussing, because a lot of this seems like it's a situation where the government has gotten so big and so complex in so many ways that I think a lot of people look at the situation now and they're protesting in, you know, kind of irrational ways, but in ways that are a response to basically, like, can you unscramble this egg at this point? Because it's, you know, the California thing is interesting because, I mean, I'm a California boy, and I know front and center that one of the big problems, I'm actually surprised they got even as far as they did with that, because the regulations to actually put down even probably 10 feet of railroad track in California is like a colossal effort, because there's so many competing regulatory agencies involved in everything. There's so many different rules, different municipalities, the localities, all these different agencies. So, I mean, I went through a 2-year process of getting a house permit after we purchased our house. I had no idea what I was getting myself into in the state of California. I mean, it took me 2 years just to get the stamp of approval to start rebuilding and tear down a garage, basically.
Where in California?
In San Diego County. Which, you know, San Diego is arguably one of the, you know, one of the more moderate places in all of California. And so, but the rules are crazy, and the rules conflict with the different localities and the different environmental agencies. So, and you get into this situation where you start to realize that, holy cow, we've scrambled this egg, and can you unscramble it at this point? And so, I don't know. Going back to Doge, you know, one thing I really liked that Trump did was the, you know, this thing where he was, for every regulation that was new, he would unwind 2, you know, something like that, you know, you start to make the world less and less complex, because that's the other thing that's really frustrating about, I think, what a lot of people experience in everyday life is that the world is getting really, really complex. It's getting more and more complex, harder to navigate in so many different ways. And then they confront the government where you're just trying to do simple things like get a house permit to remodel a home. And you're like, you're making my life more difficult. You're not helping me. You're supposed to be on my side here. Like, what's going on? I think that's the experience that a lot of people have that's frustrating and you know, kind of boiling over into these views like, hey, I'm just not even going to pay my taxes, even if it risks me going to jail.
Yeah. Brandon.
Yeah, it's a sad thing. I think the most important thing in any society is a strong middle class, and that's greatly under threat right now because, you know, it's an objective fact that the average salary is a lower number than the average cost of living right now. And you know, I think when that happens, people go into a desperate state. They get into an emotional state. They see things they disagree with in the media. And you know, the government has let people down over the last, I don't know what number you want to put on it, 50, 70 years in a big way, really put the people in a tough position. And that's a scary thing for the government. That's why we're seeing socialist sentiment. That's why we're seeing these protests and emotional things. And, people are impressionable. They go along with what they hear, and they probably don't understand the full situation. But the fact of the matter is, if you let your middle class get beat up enough, that's when bad things happen. That's when civilizations go socialist and vote in socialist leaders. So yeah, you should pay your taxes. We got swindled for sure with the whole taxes thing, but that's a different rabbit hole. But the law is to pay taxes, so pay the taxes. But I think, the bigger issue is the government letting the people down, and we should be more worried about what's happening to the middle class, because that's the biggest barrier against socialism.
Tom.
Well, Jovan Granado Gomez, you let the writer of the article put your full name in it. So sometimes privacy is a good thing. But I'll say one thing. You mean well. However, not sending government money has never stopped them from spending far more than they have and send us all a bill for it 10 years from now. That doesn't stop anything. And I think, we're not ready for the full outcome. The full outcome is if you take all the waste, fraud, and abuse and the excess price of the defense contractor and billings. Here's what happens. The economy gets cut by 33%. Here's why. Because all the people that are, the waste, fraud, and abuse, which pisses me off, all those people are buying things. Well, those things don't get bought in the economy anymore. If you take 25%, gouge burn out of the defense contractors, well, guess what? What does that do to the PE ratio of all the defense indexes and stocks? So the stock market goes down. We have a more honest economy, but everything goes down.
Including prices.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So, but this is going on for a long time. Going back to the 80s, people would pay books. Send me $4.99 and I'll give you this book. Don't pay taxes. Just send in this letter. And then I read all about it. One of my friends was telling me about the book, and I read about the book, and I read about this, and I said, do you know that this guy went to jail for writing the book? Did you know that he actually did? He refused it. He I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Okay, sir, put your hands behind your back. It's so, and then no, seriously, he went to Danbury, minimum security prison. What are you doing here? I wrote a book about never paying your taxes. What happened? Well, the people that collect the taxes were really pissed off.
Well, this also happened post-Vietnam War when people were protesting, wanted to pay taxes. It was in the thousands, maybe like 10,000 when you read about it. But do you know who actually came up with the idea of tax withholding in your income when you get your check? You know who came up with that idea, that proposed to the government? You will never be able to get. If I tell you who it is, you're going to say there's no way in the world he came up with this idea.
Reagan?
Nope. Go before that. And he said it's the biggest mistake I made in my career.
Politician or business guy?
Milton Friedman.
Oh, man.
Huh.
Milton Friedman.
Wow.
Can you verify that, Rob? Milton Friedman is the guy that came up with the tax withholding. And then he says, why don't we do this? Let's just kind of do, because people used to pay their tax, send their taxes, and we're like, no, why don't we come up with this? Milton Friedman, helped invent the modern income tax withholding system in the early 40s. And he said it's the worst. At the end of his life, he was like, this is one of the worst ideas I came up with. So guess what? There is some logic behind it. Because they had a hard time going and collecting.
Yeah.
And then it's like, why don't we just make it mandatory? And then it's like, what a great idea, Milton. And then now you don't have a choice. And they just kind of take it out. So when you read the history, I made a video about U.S. taxes many, many years ago because we went and, started kind of looking into this. So I understand the argument, but sometimes even smart people come up with terrible ideas that become permanent ideas. And this is one of those ideas. Let's go to Jamie Dimon. Here's what Jamie Dimon just recently said. And specifically about the market, gas, and about New York City. Jamie Dimon warns of business exodus from New York City as Mamdani lefty polls push for higher taxes. Watch the comparison he makes on the employees in New York on how much it's increased or decreased versus Texas. Go ahead, Rob.
Why are you buying more real estate in Mamdani's Manhattan right now?
Good answer he's going to give.
Well, it wasn't the mayor when we started building that building 5 years ago. But here's a lesson, and this lesson is true for companies, cities, states, and countries. You got to compete. There's no divine right to success. Just read the history books. So our headcount in Manhattan, when I got to J.P. Morgan, was 35,000, and now it's 26,000. Our headcount in Texas It started at 11,000, now it's 33,000. That's what happens. And, part of it's the highest individual taxes, highest estate taxes, highest corporate taxes, anti-business sentiment, and that's what happens. And, you could be any ideologue you want, but that's the real world. And people vote with their feet, and you can't get mad at them. If you believe in a free country, if someone wants to move to Florida, that's their right. And so, if they make too many mistakes, the mayors, including Mayor Mamdani, should worry about police, hospitals, subways, sanitation, storms, healthcare, schools. It's got nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans, and ideology distorts reality when it comes to something like that. So, but our building's great. We're still there. It's got some of the best people. But I think when I grew up as a kid in New York City, and you probably don't know this, there were 120 of the Fortune 500 were headquarters there. In the 1970s, 60 of the 120 left, including Exxon, GE, IBM, Union Carbide. I mean, that's not what you want. And they're all going to Texas, basically, or Nevada.
Tom, thoughts?
Guess what? Jamie just summed up. Why is it when everybody says it, when we talk about it, everybody talks about it? Yeah, all these people talk about it. Oh, that's Fox Business. Don't listen to them. Oh, that's a conservative podcast. Don't listen to them. Oh, Patrick Bet-David's made his money. He doesn't really care about anybody now. That's all BS. And they can pick on all that. But then when Jamie Dimon very eloquently, in the space of 2 minutes and 10 seconds, lays it all out, suddenly the Wall Street Journal and all the liberals, it's like headlines. Well, you know what? He's absolutely right. And you can't compete. And this is something that Pat has said. Your ideas, nobody is buying your ideas. You're trying to sell something nobody is buying. And there's Jamie saying, you got to compete. So how many voices do you need to talk about this? This is so clear to me. And it shocks me, Pat. It's like, is there one liberal leader? And the answer is, I don't think they care. I honestly don't think they care, because they think they're going to get at the federal level. They're going to be able to do everything they want at the federal level. And I don't think they worry as much about the state level. Otherwise, AOC would be in Mamdani's office saying, wait a minute. People in my district, their jobs or things like this. Instead, she blames it all on the macro. They always go for the macro, Pat. They head for the macro, and they don't really care about the micro. And what Jamie is talking about is you got to be competitive on the micro. Unless Mamdani doesn't really care about New York, it's about a much bigger plan.
Colin.
Yeah, I mean, this one drives me crazy. I grew up in Virginia, and right outside of D.C., and over the course of, my parents still live there, and I go back there a lot, and over the course of the last 25 years, every time I fly into Dulles Airport, you drive down the Dulles corridor, and what is it now? That corridor, it used to be empty. There was nothing out there. Between Tyson's Corner and where I live in Alexandria, nothing. And now it's the Fortune 500. And what did Virginia do 20 years ago? They made it very specific that they wanted to become one of the most business-friendly states in the country. They made a huge effort to do this, and they achieved it. And so it drives me crazy when I see states like New York and, where I live now, California, where they think that they can sort of just assume that people aren't going to leave. And they make it so unfriendly for businesses, hostile to some people, seemingly, that, you're pushing businesses out of there. To me, it's crazy. I was laughing because when I landed here, I saw rain for the first time in 6 weeks. So living in San Diego, it hadn't rained in March. It's, Fort Lauderdale is amazing. And San Diego is arguably one of the only places in the country where the weather is better. And so having lived in San Diego for the last 20 years, I always think to myself, you've got rich people here, you've got young, smart people going to the universities. And so why wouldn't you make this town the most business-friendly town in the whole world? And just, try to just bring everybody into this sort of a town, because it's the sort of place where everybody wants to live. Like people would love to live in places like Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and San Diego. And the difference between Fort Lauderdale and San Diego is that San Diego has become impossible to afford anything, in large part because there's not enough businesses there, because they've made it so unfriendly for businesses to form there that you don't end up having the jobs. You don't end up having the innovation and the multiplier effect that comes from being business friendly. So It's very frustrating. This one seems like sort of a no-brainer to me that, the whole country was built on, really the might of capitalism and the innovative beauty of like our,
and by the way,
our creativity.
San Diego is honestly one of the best kept secrets. It was one of the best kept secrets. You got so many things to go through: teams, sports, Del Mar, racetrack, the water. You're in a very good spot.
Best weather in America.
Best weather in America, yeah, no question about
sports stink for the record.
Well, you're an hour and a half away.
The Chargers
you're an hour and a half
They're
away,
now the
2 hours
LA
away.
Chargers.
Yeah, but there's a reason, though, why that's happening. Brandon.
I mean, one of the saddest things ever is wasted potential. I mean, it's not an accident those places are what they were. I mean, New York's geographically gifted. It's set up in a way where it enabled all that growth. It has the deep water ports, the access to the waterways, and it just like feeds people, and has the Grand Central Station, all the airports. So, I mean, I don't know if it's resting on their laurels of past greatness, or if it's a deliberate effort to drive out the right type of people and bring in another type of people. Because if you were trying to do everything in your power to make a city undesirable, you would kind of run it the way that California and New York have been run. So I that's a fascinating question. Is there a deliberate effort to drive certain people out of there, or is it just the government wanting more money to spend and taking like the fast way instead of the maybe delayed gratification way? Because you could generate more taxes in different ways than direct income taxes, like sales taxes or property taxes. So I don't know. I don't know if they're trying to drive people out or if they're just assuming that people won't actually leave.
I mean, Detroit used to be the richest city in America. You think they drove it out because they wanted to move them to other states and turn them liberal? Do you think they were absolutely dumb with their policies, with that mayor who was a corrupt mayor multiple times and made it harder and harder and harder, and eventually like, listen, we're out of here. This is not the place to be living. So I think a part of it is stupidity on the fact that they think people will stay because it's so good. Like it's the why the mighty fall. Rob, can you pull up the 5 points of why the mighty fall? We talked about it yesterday as well with Jiang. Jim Collins, he's known for his book, Good to Great. But the book I like more than Good to Great is Why the Mighty Fall. And he makes 5 points on this. Hubris, born of success, okay? Leaders believe their success is deserving, guaranteed, and they become arrogant. And they ignore the hard work that created it. Undisciplined pursuit of more. Denial of risk and peril. Grasping for salvation. Capitulation to irrelevance or death. People think it'll never happen to me and it's too late. And you're sitting there saying, what happened to Kmart?
Yeah.
What happened to Blockbuster? Oh, it'll never happen to us. It'll never happen to us. Gone. You realize Disney's been around since 1923. It's a $180 billion company. Netflix has been around since 1997. They're a $400 billion behemoth. Disney owns everything you can think about on the media space. Star Wars, Marvel, all this stuff. Netflix is like, no, we're just going to keep building our company. It's what we're going to be doing, and they're destroying them. By the way, let me continue with this Jamie Dimon thing. Tom, have you given this to Rob? Does Rob have this or no?
No.
Can you send it to Rob as well so Rob can show it? Do you have it in image format or no?
Yeah, let me.
Okay. So while I'm reading this, you send it to him. So Jamie says the 5 risks that he's worried about in 2026. Number 1, he says inflation. Number 2, he says intensifying competition, meaning they're facing a growing set of non-traditional rivals in payments and digital banking. A whole new set of competitors is emerging based on blockchain. That's number 2. Number 3, Americans lost of trust in the U.S. government. Number 4 is artificial intelligence, AI. And last but not least is weak allies. Europe is entering a decisive decade, and it is unable to act, he said. He cited internal trade barriers and expensive social welfare programs, but praised military spending boosts, is what he's talking about. So now let's talk about AI. When it comes down to AI, this chart Chamath shared that Tom handed to me, if you want to go a little bit closer, it says the negative perception around AI is now worse than ICE. So the Pope has got the biggest plus minus. Shout out to Umberto. Plus 34. Stephen Colbert is plus 10. Rubio's minus 7. Sanctuary City's minus 10. J.D. Vance minus 11. AOC minus 11. Republican Party minus 14. Kamala Harris minus 17. Newsom minus 18. ICE minus 18. Look at AI. Minus 20. Democratic Party minus 22. Iran minus 53. This is from NBC News. Go a little bit lower. And it's leading to electricity prices rising. And they're blaming AI. Look at the numbers of what it was like. 2014 steady. 2016 steady. 2018 steady. 2020 steady. Look at 2021. Skyrocketing. Prices of electricity, and that's not even showing what happened in 25 or 26. If you want to go even a little bit lower, Rob, local opposition is growing, and they are voting down data centers. Okay, from 2023, 5 to 2. Okay, and 5 is protested, 2 canceled. This is U.S. data centers protested and canceled. About 40% of data centers now face sustained local opposition or eventually being canceled. 15 to 6, 63-25, 140. Tom, what are your thoughts on this? Specifically what Jamie Dimon said and the frustration with AI.
Well, guess what? What Jamie Dimon is talking about, you have to compete to win. And so if you're going to win, you have to control the narrative. And this shows that Americans are fed up with the increase in the energy prices, and they're pointing it out toward data centers, and data centers run AI. So AI gets this negative feeling because, 1, they think it's taking jobs. 2, they think it's the reason they have to build more data centers. Data centers are increasing my electricity costs. My electricity costs are killing me, especially if you don't live in San Diego. You live in some place where you have to run electricity all year, like Minnesota, and places where, you got to run all of your heating equipment and AC in Dallas. And so people get upset. And that's what's going on. Now you got to win. The other side of this is at the beginning of 26, Trump did the voluntary ratepayer pledge, I think it was called, and where that the data centers would voluntarily agree that they would partner with local electrical utilities and they would absorb or be part of building efficient, there it is, 2026 ratepayer protection pledge. I was right. So Jamie Dimon says you got to compete. Trump gave people an opportunity. This was voluntary. It says you build your data center and then say, look, by the way, to avoid local electricity spikes, I'm going to be putting in permits for micro nukes, 6th generation, 5th generation things, so I can power the data center. And any excess power, I'll put out to the grid. And so, you do it that way, you have it. But they've lost the narrative. And Jamie Dimon's right. You have to compete to get people to stay. And AI and the electric industry have lost the narrative. And now 40% of their attempt to start projects are being defeated by people. And what we need, what Trump could do this summer? Let's take this from a voluntary ratepayer pledge, which was a good thing that he put forward in March, to let's make it have teeth. Let's make it real. Let's make it that we could legislate that says, hey, if Pat and Tom want to open a paint company and we're going to make an innovative new paint, we would have to get permits and permission from the EPA for whatever it is we're making. Well, because they say, we don't want you guys, whatever is in your paint, getting into groundwater, getting this, that, and the other. We don't care who you are. We're going to regulate what you're doing because it's a chemical. Well, if you go from voluntary ratepayer pledge to something that was, firm, now to build the data center, it becomes a very simple matter. Hey, we're building the data center here, but don't worry about electrical costs because I'm going to get a permit for, a micro nuke, or I'm going to participate with the lower, ECOT in Texas or whatever it is, and I'm going to participate with them, and I'm going to get the electricity, resources built that we need. And so the price of your electricity is not going to go up. What people forget is AI is only one part of the problem, is that the increase in demand for electricity has been coming for 7 years in America because of EVs. It used to be at night we would give our power a break because at night all we powered was maybe air conditioning in hotter climates and everything else was turned off. Well, now there are so many EVs like in California that at night the grid doesn't get a rest because your EV is in your garage or in the parking space at your apartment plugged in. And so, people think of EVs as green. They are up to a point until you follow that extension cord all the way back to the power plant and say, what's it burning to make the, like in West Virginia, is an EV technically worse because it's all coal power plants?
Colin.
Yeah, the AI one's tough because I think the other thing that a lot of consumers look at is they're worried they're all going to lose their jobs from AI in the long run. So I think there's a, again, going back to you've lost the narrative. So far, the labor market's interesting because so far what we've seen from companies is we've seen a slowdown in hiring, but we have not seen anything along the lines of like mass firings from AI. And so, the narrative around the labor market in AI has been very scary, and I don't think that it's necessarily been accurate. Is that coming? God, I don't know. I have no idea how the whole AI thing is going to play out. I think AI gets really interesting when the robotics catches up with the actual software. That's when potentially, when you see a robot navigating a construction site, actually nailing, doing some framing and stuff. That's when you wake up and probably say, "Oh, we're all really screwed now." But until then, the impact has not materialized here. So yeah, they've lost the narrative. I don't know. I think the AI war is a war that you can't lose this one technologically. And so my view is that, God, going back to the government spending, if the government should be investing in anything, it should be this space. It should be the energy grid. It should be, getting out of the way of, a lot of the innovation that's going on in this space, allowing the innovation in things like fusion and fission and alternative energies to really flourish and grow in a way where you allow the competitive forces to ultimately dictate a winner here. And so, I don't know. I kind of see both sides of the arguments here, and I understand why households are increasingly concerned. But I also think that this is something that you can't just look at it and be negative about, because in the long run, I really think AI has the potential to have an enormously positive impact in just a huge multiplier effect on the U.S. economy in the long run.
Brandon.
Yeah, so I mean, isn't it amazing that the government spent $200 billion on EV initiatives and they didn't think to beef up the amount of energy that the country produces? But I mean, that's a typical thing. We know they haven't done a lot of nukes, but I think it's a good thing.
You're talking about nuclear power.
Yeah,
when you're saying
right. Yeah, it could be misleading. But no, I think a good amount of worry is healthy. I mean, Jamie Dimon's not actually worried. I think he's just worried about number two, the banking one, which I think would be awesome if he got some competition, because the banking's been a cartel that's blocked everybody out for too long of a time. So that would be a nice one. But now the average person, I think the average person should be worried, because a lot of jobs will go away and a lot of skills will become irrelevant. But I mean, I think you should be worried. I convince myself every day that if I don't hit a certain number in terms of like income or revenue, that I'm going to be eviscerated by the circumstances of the world. So I think you should operate under that belief if you're not exactly where you want to be. Like he says, like worry is a bad thing.
Yeah. No, listen, it's important to pay attention to it. Mark Cuban said something about AI as well yesterday. I think he tweeted this a couple days ago. American billionaire Mark Cuban warns startup CEOs you are in deep shit if it doesn't make sense for you to ask your AI models questions about, and here's what it is. Every entrepreneur that knows how to use AI is trying to find out ways to build AI native companies that completely displace incumbents. For the incumbents, it is the innovator's AI dilemma. If the startups get traction and they can't buy them, the CEOs will face multiple huge dilemmas. Number one, do they tear down their companies and reinvent them as native AI? Rob, if you can lift it up a little bit. How do they explain it to public shareholders? Number two, you will know AI is having a huge impact on public companies when there are two types of lawsuits. Shareholders that sue company for tearing down the company and crushing the stock price, or number two, shareholders that sue the company for not tearing down the company and crushing the stock price. Lose-lose. I think most CEOs don't come close to understanding AI in enough detail to even begin to consider these decisions. Hint, asking your AI models the best paths from where you are now to being an AI native version that can achieve the same economics has to be one of your initial steps. If asking your models questions doesn't make sense to you, you are in deep shit. Tom.
Well, if you go back to the top of the tweet, I think I know what he's talking about. It's the innovator's AI dilemma. The innovator's dilemma was a book written by Clayton Christensen. What Clayton Christensen said was that the innovator's dilemma is that, a well-managed company can run headlong into like a disruptive technology, the internet, whatever it is, e-commerce. And that those things initially maybe, if you run to it as an innovator, Pat, like you're a CEO and you're an innovator and you say, hey, we have to be doing something on this. And initially, maybe it doesn't go so well. Then you go, maybe it's not what it's cracked. Maybe e-commerce not what it's cracked up to be. Security wasn't there. Some of our people complained that wasn't a human. The orders, we couldn't track them as well. This e-commerce isn't what it's cracked up to be. And then you kind of dismiss it. That's the dilemma. Then you come back later and go, wait a minute, I just got my butt kicked by companies that made e-commerce work, and it's a whole different channel of distribution for them now. Well, I think what Mark Cuban is talking about is Clayton Christensen. And he's talking about that if you think right now, because you tried to use it and it didn't result in massive cost savings, you are facing, and you should be asking yourself about tearing down and going back. And I think that's what he's talking about. And I think he's making a really good point that if you think you don't see enough benefit now, if you're not asking yourself about tearing it down and back, then you could be out in the cold when some company does.
Cullen.
Yeah, I mean, God, if you're running, especially a big company, you cannot afford to turn your back on this technology. I mean, here's the thing. I think that I've called AI a really disruptive disaggregator. And what I mean by that is that AI is decentralizing the economy in a way that we are probably never going to experience, because what it's doing is it's empowering your average person to actually do the work of a relatively large corporation now. You can have a small team of people who, if they're adept at using AI, they can operate like a really big team. I mean, I'll use my business as a great example, where last year I was planning to hire multiple CFPs and probably a tech person. And all of a sudden I start getting really adept at AI, and I start realizing, holy cow, I can write software. If I have a financial planning question now, maybe I know 80% of the right things to actually tackle, but that last 20% made my answer wrong. I know the answer to that last 20% now, where maybe I'm not a CFP, but I'm as dangerous as a CFP now, because I know I'm experienced enough to operate like a CFP, and I know the right questions to ask to get me to that 100%. And I can prompt an AI to get me to the right place and give a client the right answer. And so I'm suddenly able to operate as a multi-person financial planning team, where you look at, especially entities like, gosh, law firms or big consulting firms. I think that it's interesting that Mark points out shareholders. I don't think the owners are the people who are at risk here. The owners are the people who this is all going to be accretive to in the long run. They're going to be the beneficiaries of this, because the profits ultimately will flow to them. It's the workers. You think of the structure of something like a law firm, where you've got, say 50 partners and, 200 associates there. What does a law firm want to do? A law firm wants those associates just bill. The problem is now you've got incumbents that can come in that are, let's say, a 5-person law firm with 5 partners and a 20-person associate team. That law firm all of a sudden has the capability to be as efficient as the big law firm. And what's going to happen there? It's competition. That big firm can no longer charge the huge rates that they wanted to. Their associates can't just keep billing at $250 an hour. And all of a sudden, the smaller firm has pricing power. What's going to happen? Prices come down, competition wins. The big firms have to get disaggregated because the small firms are more competitive.
Is CFP still what it was back in the days? Like, I know you used to be at Merrill before. You had a $500 million of money under management back in the days when you were at Merrill. It was a big deal when you were a CFP. I just remember the guy's a certified financial planner. Oh my God, you'd put on when I was at Morgan Stanley, Dean Ron, I'm like, that guy's a certified financial planner. I wish I could become one. Does it still carry a big?
It'll be interesting to see how that materializes. I mean, I would argue that it's especially in the scope of AI, it's probably one of the more valuable certifications you can have, because something like a CFA, actually all the guys that work at investment banks, their jobs have maybe not become replaceable with AI, but that's a workload that AI can do very, very well. The interesting thing about being a CFP is that being a CFP is still, it's a person-to-person business. Yeah. You're working in a very personalized, human-to-human interaction that I actually think industries like that potentially, if you deal with people, you shake people's hands every day, that's something that's going to become more valuable in the AI world, because that's something that people are going to demand more of. They're going to want more of the face-to-face in a world where they get that.
I agree. I think team humans long-term, AI is going to go like this, and then they're going to come back and say, who still has influence over people? those are the people we need to go and find. Brandon.
Well, a massive opportunity here for anybody who's worried about losing a job. If you become masterful at knowing how to use and implement AI, I just sent up a report. On average, 90 to 95% companies who are trying to use AI to do something for their business and find no ROI on it. So meaning they don't know how to use or implement it. So there's a huge gap right now in wanting to use AI for a business and not knowing what to do with it once you implement it. So, that's I think that's a huge blue ocean for a lot of people if they know what to do with AI but don't know what to do with a job or career or future.
Let me go to the next one. You're talking about some people that are worried about their jobs in the future. Lowe's is investing $250 million to train plumbers, carpenters, and electricians. As its CEO says, skilled trades are critical to the future. So the CEO is a stand-up guy, total stud of a guy. Let me get to this real quick so I can read the story to you. So for decades, young people were told to go to college with white-collar jobs and like coding cast as the future. But as AI disrupts that career path, skills trades are emerging as a more resilient route to stable, well-paying jobs. And Lowe's is betting heavily on the future. The home improvement giant exclusive told Fortune that its foundation is investing $250 million over the next decade to help 250,000 skilled trade workers in a field like plumbing, carpentry, and electrical work. We're a company that believes strongly in the future of AI, but in a world where administrative and analytical occupations are going to be increasingly dominated with the acceleration of AI, we think the skilled trade initiative is going to be even more important here in the near future. Ellison told Fortune magazine, AI, he noted, has clear limits. It can write code, draft emails, analyze spreadsheets, but it cannot show up to fix what's broken or build the physical infrastructure such as data centers that powers the future digital economy. As powerful as AI will become, AI cannot climb a ladder to change the battery in your smoke detector. And Ellison said, it can't change your furnace filter. It can't clean your dryer vent. It can't repair a hole on your roof. And the man's got a point. Marvin Ellison, if you want to pull it up, Rob. Marvin Ellison, the CEO of Lowe's. Right here, great family guy, came from a very good family. His mom and dad, incredible family. His brother, both very successful. He's been there for quite some time, I believe. He's been there for 8 years now as a CEO. Tom, your thoughts on the strategy with what Lowe's is doing?
Well, first of all, I think Marvin Ellison's getting it right. Remember, in 2024, Lowe's was one of the companies that stepped up and said, we're rolling back on this DEI stuff. And they had two parallel groups, if I'm remembering the article correctly. And one was a DEI group and one was the regular HR group. And he said, we're rolling this back and let's just put HR back into one group. And so he did that. And he got a lot of thumbs up for that from what I think is the right side of life. And so now he's come back and he's making a point here. And I think the point that he's making is that, look, people are going to need an electrician. An electrician's going to buy stuff at Lowe's to come do a job at your house. If we want to sell more stuff, and Americans are going to need, another, they build a room under their house, they're going to need an electrician to come, they're going to need this, that, and the other, or whatever it is they're doing. We want them to buy all the stuff from Lowe's, but there is an influencer in the middle called the electrician who's actually going to be buying it. Because you and me aren't going to say, hey, buy this many conduit, this many light switch, this many there. No, we're going to say, put a ceiling fan in the top of my second bedroom and put a switch on the wall, right? Well, what he's saying, Pat, is that people need to be trained to do that. And so this creates jobs for Americans. This creates opportunity for young people. And what it does, it now makes a connection with Lowe's. Lowe's is where you come not only to buy the ceiling fan and all the other stuff you need, but the person that's going to install it. Lowe's and Home Depot for a long time have had contractors. You could say, hey, who's going to install the carpet or the tile? Oh, we can recommend a couple of guys. And what he's just talking about is pushing this even more and doubling down on it. And I think it's a great program.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is interesting to me. I worry a little bit. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old daughter, so I think about the future a lot and what I want them to do. What would I want them to study and train for? And there is a part of me that worries: is this narrative similar to the learn to code narrative? Because I can see a world in the future where robots aren't going to be able to do plumbing. They're not going to be able to crawl into AC vents, but a lot of these jobs, I worry robots are going to be very, very good at these jobs. A lot of these jobs,
including plumbing and
not plumbing, I mean things that require, like, that's one of the things that robotics is actually very bad at, is you a robot can't crawl under a sink and actually, feel the water pressure. So things like that are very, very hard to actually build out. But will a robot in 20 years be able to frame an entire house? I would be shocked if it can't. So things like that. There's a lot of construction jobs. There's a lot of manual labor jobs that I actually think robotics is going to be able to destroy. So I don't know. My daughters aren't going to be construction workers anyway, but for me, if I'm guiding my daughter into an industry, I want my daughter to probably be the architect on a construction site. I don't want her to be the plumber or, some other job. And that still is it brings in the whole college debate. I actually think college is going to get more valuable in the future because I think that learning first of all to be creative and navigating lots of different types of subject matter and skills. But more importantly, I think college is probably going to become more valuable in the future because you got to learn how to be a person in college. That's really the primary benefit of college, in my opinion, is that you go there to learn how to be a young adult, to be responsible, to start building some of the skills that'll actually make you valuable in the workforce. And so, to me, learning how to be a person, learning how to actually interact with other people is going to be one of the most valuable skills in a world where we're increasingly just staring at our phones and not interacting with each other.
Yeah, when it comes to the trades, there's going to be an imminent massive shortage with it. And while the robots might replace these people, if that does happen, they will be the last ones to replace them. It's going to be the white-collar jobs before it's the blue-collar jobs. So I think there is a resurgence of people entering these things. I mean, even at SLS, we were giving out the badges for different industries so people could network with that. And the first one to run out, we kept running out the contractor badges and having to go get more. So there's a huge amount of people that are flooding that industry. And I think that's kind of a matter of national stability. If you suddenly have you don't have enough plumbers for society, they're showing once these boomers retire, there's going to be one plumber for every there was some crazy number. There's gonna be one plumber for every 30 people, or versus every 15 people once this group retires. So I think it's a good thing that people are flooding into that. I think it's gonna be the last one that gets replaced by the robots.
But eventually it will.
Probably. I mean, I've been surprised by the things the robots have been able to do.
The quality of robots is just going to
they're cutting hair and stuff now. I didn't expect that to happen.
Quality is going to get better. All right, let me get to this last story here and we'll wrap up. No mediocre worker is safe. The bar for keeping your job just went up. This is a Business Insider story. With hiring budget constraints, some companies are finding a different way to bring in talent, replacing workers with better ones. There's just no appetite for mediocrity anymore, said Brent Orsuga, founder of the supply chain and logistics recruiting firm Pinnacle Growth Advisors. Over the past year, he's seen many of his clients quietly replace employees rather than grow headcount. Everyone was looking at what they have and being like, I want the best of the best, Orsuga said. While upgrading isn't new, Orsuga said that 2025 was the biggest year he's seen in the trend in more than 2 decades in the recruiting world. He calls it bullseye hiring. It's like every seat matters. So I've got to hit a bullseye and get the right person in the right seat. Hiring has slowed in the U.S. recently due to economic uncertainty, cutting costs, and adoption. In February, the hiring rate fell to 3.1%, a modern low matched only by pandemic and early recovery from the Great Recession. Last year, roughly 11% of CEOs were replaced across 1,500 of the largest public companies, according to the analysis by executive recruiting from Spencer Stuart. That's the highest turnover rate since 2010 when the U.S. was emerging from the Great Recession. Tom.
What's very interesting is we've gone through so many waves in just 6 years, haven't we? We go through this wave during COVID where people walk across the street for more money, come back to try to hold you hostage and say, well, I'm going to permanently work from home and I'm going to do this, that, and other. Even in 2000 and early 23 when we were allowed to go back outside without a mask. So yesterday, and I'm not going to say who, but you know what I'm talking about, Pat. Yesterday, Bet David Consulting was working with a client, and I have a privilege to be working on that account. And one of the things we talked about, they were talking about a 4-person department and do we need to hire more people? And one of the things we processed, well, first make sure the 4 you have are performing at the right level. And they had 1 star, and then the other 3, there was a difference in performance. So the first thing they said, instead of hiring, you know what they said, Pat? Let's replace the low one so that the 3 that are performing at a nice optimal level, what we need, are performing. And then the star, will create a partnership with one of the others, see if they can bring it up. So they want to take the same 4 people and see if they can get more productivity out of it. This was sales. And they see it as, let's replace one. That's what the article is saying. A mediocre person on that 4-person sales squad is going to be replaced. And then they're going to think about growth forward. And by the way, they looked at it and they talked about burnout. They cared about the people. They didn't want the 4 people to be like pushed way hard and burn them out. They just want nominal performance. And so this is a case study we just saw yesterday of a real company saying, hey, you know what? Economy could be tough. Before I hire another, let's make sure the ones I have are all performing really well.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's no excuse for being stupid anymore. I mean, we've all got a super intelligence in our pocket now. I laugh when I see people post really, really silly things on Twitter now because I think to myself, I say, you could have fact-checked this in 10 seconds. Instead, you're getting dunked on by 10,000 people because you didn't take, 10 seconds to just fact-check it on GPT or Grok or any of the other dozens of these. So I think people are losing patience with the bad takes, just the inability to do rudimentary basic research in basic job functions.
Brandon.
Yeah, there's nothing bad, I don't think, about like being paranoid about you should always be paranoid about the notion of losing your job and falling into the abyss and being replaced by AI and not being able to find another one. Like what's the downside of thinking that way? Like and you said you can control like how smart you are now. There's no excuse for being stupid. Maybe it's genetics, but there's no excuse for no effort. That's the thing. Like if somebody genuinely just doesn't put effort forward, like you could control how much effort you put forward every day, and like it makes you slightly less mediocre if you're given everything you have every day. So I mean, that's the thing. It's like it was a great job market in 2021. There's these little spurts when the employee has the upper hand because there's a lot of job offerings and postings. But then, it does swing back to where the employer has the upper hand. And, you get these unexpected market crashes. You get unexpected technology. So, yeah, I would definitely be
That's the thing.
putting effort forward.
Everyone can't be super smart.
No,
but
but
everybody can try.
Yeah.
Everybody can put in a maximum effort. And that's the thing that I think is frustrating when you start to see, deficient work is that it's just like, you're not even trying here, obviously.
This is the worst time to be lazy. This is the worst time to not be a student. This is the worst time to be casual. This is the worst time to be addicted to Netflix and video games and all of that. That's not paying your bills. Because you will be destroyed. It's the worst time to be casual. Worst time. It's nasty times are coming for you. Nasty. You think this is a bad season? Nasty times are coming to those that are casual. Nasty times are coming to those that are sitting around, not reading a book, not learning a new skill set, not choosing to recreate themselves. Absolutely nasty. Now, let me give the flip side. If you're somebody that's confident, that's going to go out there and work on your leaks and work on certain areas that you have, and you're going to go and say, I'm going to learn 2 or 3 skill sets. You're about to have the greatest season of your life the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years. Because the disparity of getting exposed for being casual, it's always exposed it, but it's never been that big of a disparity. It's about to be like this, where everyone's going to know you sat around and did nothing with all the stuff that was available to you. Yes. What a waste of 10 years. What a waste of 5 years. It negatively impacted your kids' lives versus what a great strategic move you made. You went and read books. You went and attended business events. You went and found ways to learn a new skill set. And because of that, your kids are impacted by it. Your grandkids are impacted by it. Your spouse, your family, yourself, your older future version of you is going to be impacted by it. And it's amazing how quickly you see results if you work on it. Like, one of my kids plays soccer, and I watch him when he plays, okay? He's the youngest on every team because he's on the back end. So he's the youngest. You know how the age gap is August, September? He falls on the other side.
So he was the last birthday, so youngest in his class.
So now they're changing it this year for him, which he's going to be the oldest for the first time because they're changing the sport age stuff in Florida, which is going to benefit him. But he's always the smallest guy on the team. Always. So I see his speed, very fast. Shot, strong. He's got a strong foot. Tough, strong, all of that. Footwork, okay. Not there yet. So we started obsessing over footwork. And, you know, Jennifer and I were talking. It's like, look, you got to learn spacing so you can be open. And I said, no, this is not how life works, babe. She says, what do you mean? I said, let me tell you why players are open and why players are not. She said, why? I said, when I played basketball, I was a horrible shooter. Do you know what I never did? What? Never make eye contact with the point guard. Why? Because if you make eye contact with the point guard, what's the point guard going to do?
Pass it.
Give you the ball. Now, rebounding, guess what? I was the best guy that could rebound, and I would pass it to you. But don't give me the ball to shoot the ball. The moment I got a little bit better in shooting, guess what would happen? You're asking for the ball. I said, if Dylan trusts footwork more, he's going to be asking and demanding for the ball. And I'm telling this to Dylan, and he's like sitting there saying, maybe that makes sense. I said, when you're not good with footwork, you don't want to lose the ball because you're afraid I'm going to lose the ball if it comes to me. You're telling that to yourself.
Right.
All of a sudden, the obsession on footwork, we've taken it to a whole different level with him. He went to a tryout a couple of days ago, one of the best teams over here. You know how many goals he scored in the game? Everybody scored 1. The other second best guy scored 2. He scored 5 goals. And you know why it was? All because of footwork. Wow. So for all of us that are watching this, you know, that's an example for my son. But what is it for you? Is it communication? Guy sent me a minute yesterday saying I had an embarrassing PR moment. I was interviewed by somebody. It was so embarrassing that I don't ever want to experience something like this again because it negatively impacted my life and my business. Guess what that guy needs to learn? What happened?
No, I'm grimacing for the CEO. I'm like,
it's horrible. And I'm like, well, guess what? That's something you can learn on how to do. It could be sales. It could be negotiation. It could be AI. It could be Tom spending all the time in cloud. It could be your own investment. Some of you guys maybe didn't make a lot of money the last 12 months, 18 months. You're like, dude, I don't know a lot about money. Well, guess what? Go order this book and learn. Go order this book, Your Perfect Portfolio by Cullen Roche. Go order this book and get better. He has a 10 philosophy on how to get better with your money. If you're not better with money management today, the information is out there. It's not like you don't have access to it. The information is out there. Rob, let's put the link below for people to go out there and order that. But I think this is the worst time to be lazy, casual, sitting on the sidelines, not recreating yourself. And it's the greatest time for people that are willing to get in the mix. Anyways, having said that, Cullen, thank you for coming out. This was great. Hearing your perspective. You sound very fair, reasonable, and you're willing to entertain opinions from all sides. Gang, everybody that's out there that's watching this, we're doing it again when, Rob? I think we got, tomorrow we got Sheriff Grady Judd. Am I saying it correctly?
Correct.
In the right order.
Yes, sir.
One of my favorite guys in the world. Last time we had him, one of the clips got 29 million views. The stuff we talked about yesterday, he's a fan favorite here. Love the guy. Right afterwards, we had a 20, 30-minute conversation together, and we've been texting all week together. Phenomenal guy. That goes out live tomorrow, and then we'll have Home Team again on Friday. God bless everybody. Take care. Bye-bye, bye-bye.